panel discussion is as follows. Can the St. Martin labor movement reinvent itself? The panel consists of three persons, namely Mr. Theophilus Thompson, president of the Rifle Union, Mr. Albert Blake, who is the General Secretary of the Unity 978 Union on the northern side of the island, and myself, Reginald Bakari Arundel, General Secretary of the Wigsu PSU Union. Now, the objective of the panel discussion is to utilize the opportunity to assess and reflect on the role of the trade union movement on St. Martin in light of the constantly fast-changing global developments as well as major changes in our local economy and labor market. We are hoping to extract and exchange important lessons, and we are also aiming to provide recommendations on how we can not only reinvent ourselves but also rebuild a stronger workers' movement. Now, we are hoping that by the end of the panel discussion, that persons who are members or possibly even potential members would have deepened their commitment towards the trade union movement and, of course, be part of a struggle that aims to uplift the working class families of this great island.
But why are you using the title Emancipation Day when you're talking about the uplifting of trade of the unions?
I love that question. If we take a quick look at history, we would have noticed that emancipation had a number of dimensions. There was the economic dimension and there was also the racial dimension. When we look at the economic dimension, we realize that the enslaved Africans were able to withhold their labor, and as a result thereof was able to destabilize or shake up the economic system of the plantation of the plantation owners, as well as the countries that were attached to these plantations. So what am I saying? It is because of the labor movement, the enslaved Africans who organized themselves, which in turn created or allowed it to be a worker struggle, is the reason it played a major role towards the liberation of Africans in that particular period and at that particular time. Now, am I saying that this process has ended? Absolutely not. But what we have seen is that the trade union movement is an outgrowth or an extension of that particular struggle at that time. So there is a very strong connection between emancipation, right, and the trade union movement.
Now, why would you only now look to bring this panel forward when this exists for so many years?
Well, to be honest, there's always much to do, and at times we often miss crucial opportunities to step back and reflect. Now, comrade, you would agree that since the passing of Hurricane Irma, for instance, we have noticed a number of significant changes and shifts, not only in our economy, but also on the labor market. As a result of these shifts and changes means that more will be expected of the trade union movement of St. Martin in order to properly represent the interests of the working class families. All right? So therefore we thought, there's no better time than now than for us to really sit back, assess, exchange ideas, as I said earlier, in order to plan the way forward. So that's the reason why it's coming up now.
All right. Now, you're going to keep this thing on Sunday coming, starting from 7 p.m. How long is going to be the whole discussion?
Okay, so each panelist will have approximately 10 to 15 minutes to speak. I also forgot to mention that we will have Mr. Hosilek Jr., who will open up the discussion by providing us with a historical overview of the trade union movement on St. Martin. And we believe that discussion or that presentation will set the stage, because in order to plan forward, you must know the historical conditions and developments which contributed to present-day conditions. All right? So Mr. Lake will give us that presentation. After that, we will have the panel discussion where each panelist will be providing their contribution and insight with regards to how we can reinvent ourselves. And that will be followed by a question and answer from the audience, because we always love to hear from the audience to get more understanding, to get ideas, and maybe even provide critical insights that can help us to reinvent this movement.
It's been said that behind every door, possibility awaits. How much possibility depends on which door you open first. Every day, we help our customers discover the possibilities in their lives. It all starts with a conversation. Scotiabank. Discover what's possible.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
So I will go into the presentation just again to stress to kind of how we got here. UTS was a telecommunication company owned by SXM and Curacao. I also want to preface this by saying all of this information is based on what was provided by UTS. So the presentation that was done here is an important part of how we get this information. In 2014, a motion was passed by Curacao to have UTS find a strategic partner to take over. And then in May 2016, the shareholders, so both Curacao and St. Martin as a minority shareholder, basically decided to go forward with negotiating a sale. In mid-March of 2019, after a long negotiation, Curacao agreed to transfer its shares, so they're 87.5% to Liberty. So I want to stress again, the majority shareholder, the person that has more of the decision-making shares and so on, the bigger brunt of it, has already taken the decision to sell. We still have this 12.5%, and now the decision is sell or not sell, and the decision was taken together with the shareholders, as I said earlier, in May 2016. Now, the key reason cited for the sale was diminishing value of the company. The company's value was going down, and an urgent need for cash injection. Without such cash injection, the company could continue to falter or hurt, which would risk the services they provide as well as the jobs. So the three biggest threats, to summarize the kind of the need for this law. Share dilution was a concept heavily debated and explained, I believe, in the Central Committee. It is basically the concept where a company can issue more shares or absorb more debt, and as a result of that, the other shares, so our 12.5%, can go down extremely lower in value. That is a imminent threat. I mentioned debt absorption as well. If Liberty decides, for example, to bring in a partner and borrow $500 million, then now the net value of the company goes down, so obviously do your shares as well. These are real threats that could happen if we continue to just leave the shares sit there. The current value of 21 million or 20 million plus could possibly go down as a result of this. And also, projected income versus cash needs. As you know, it was heavily debated in the budget, the urgent cash situation of the country. And I believe any opportunities to ensure that we can get funds especially to pay off debts, as highlighted for the urgent need of our police officers and other things that I'll get into in a while. This is a great opportunity to ensure that we are getting cash that we urgently need, as opposed to hoping for an income or dividend or such, which in fact, based on the financials from the General Audit Chamber that I have perused, we have not received any sort of dividends or cash benefits from the ownership of 12.5% of UTS. Just to summarize a bit, the law itself. Some of the strengths of the law, I believe, is that it complies with the accountability ordinance. A lot of effort was taken to ensure that this central ordinance, I believe it's Article 43, if I'm not mistaken, that dictates the sale of government assets, was followed to the T. It takes into account all the advice from the Raad van Advies, and I have to say they were, I think, very instrumental in helping me shape the law. It kind of transformed quite a lot as a result of their advice. Expeditious legislative process. That is due to Article 2 of this law that has the so-called spoedeisend belang, that allows the process, instead of where the ratification has to take 6 weeks for the ombudsman to ratify the law or to do the constitutional check, due to the sensitive and urgent nature of the law, it was argued and I believe justified in the law, in the Memorie van Toelichting, that we need to make this deal done as soon as possible. And execution for the government is not difficult, especially since they have had the time to prepare. So the good thing with this law is that, as we've seen with other initiative laws, it's very unfortunate that while the law has passed in Parliament, the part that why it hasn't come into effect, so the timeshare law and the drinking age law, it has to do with implementation. The good thing with this law, based on information I've received from the Minister of Finance and Justice, is that they are ready to go. This law has to pass, and they have done the groundwork from government side to make sure that they can execute. Now, the law, as I mentioned, is not ideal, and it's good to highlight what the weaknesses could be in the law so that we can try to mitigate those. And the law does not in itself guarantee the sale. So in other words, when we pass today, the law does not mean that the sale would happen. We still depend on the government to execute, as I mentioned earlier. Resources available to the government are not available to the MP. For example, from a legislative process, they have the ministries, they have legal affairs, they have these different things, but they also have information, they've been in the board meetings and such. So it was a bit of a challenging situation to ensure that I'm getting the most up-to-date information from the ministers. As you know, the procedure for that can be a bit cumbersome in terms of writing to the chair then has to communicate with the ministries, and so on. So that was also something that was difficult. To mitigate that, a letter was sent to both ministers asking them to ensure that Parliament has the most recent and up-to-date information, and in preparation for the public meeting, that most recent and up-to-date information has been sent to the members of Parliament. So that's how I dealt with that slight weakness in the law. The situation is very fluid, and parameters can change at any time. We also received a letter from Liberty, the buyer, with a very stern concern, I would say, about the fact that the process is still not finalized. And that fluidity could be very dangerous, because if we did not proceed with this process, they could pull out and decide, let's do something else with these shares, and our shares get diluted. Due to budgetary restrictions, the funds must go to old debt. This is due to the recommendations or agreements made with the CFT, which has also been provided to the members of Parliament. And it is very clear that the intention is any unforeseen income should go towards paying off debt. Now, while that might be a weakness, in my opinion, in terms of we can't simply take these funds, issue a budget amendment, and insist that it goes to, let's say, for example, the library, because that's not an old debt. I turn that into an opportunity because I believe that the funds can then go into other issues, such as housing, the police force, but I do have an update on that in the end, but especially the police force. It's been very much debated, the fact that they are not, well, actually, let me say, justice workers, because it's beyond just the police force. And being able to make 8 million guilders out of this directly available towards that debt could finally bridge the issue that we've had with justice workers. It's not just about the function book. It is also about, can government afford to pay this the minute that becomes active? This solves that situation. This law is an adequate framework for other companies that would like to engage in strategic partnerships. It is public information based on what was sent out to the media that Telem had requested a meeting with us members of parliament, albeit closed door, but it was public information that the topic of the meeting was seeking a strategic partner. This law can create is basically a framework to make it easier for us in the future. If we do choose to support such a route, the government or members of parliament can use this as a framework to do such things in the future. Threats, share dilution. That is definitely our biggest threat. Again, the value of our shares currently being a minimum of 20 million, due to share dilution can probably become 2 million, 1 million, 500,000. The value of the shares can lower with time. As negotiations are going on, if Liberty decides to pull out or something because we didn't take the bull by the horns, the share price can drop as well. Misinformation can cause confusion in the purpose of this law. So I think it was important to do this presentation and be as open as possible, public relations, information going out there to keep the public informed of what this law really is. Because again, this law is not as a result of St. Martin making the decision to sell the entire UTS. That was a joint decision. And also one misinformation that might get out there is that the 12.5% is the building there on Canigita Street. That is not the case. The 12.5% is of the entire UTS conglomerate. That is something, those little informations had to be put out there. So the funds, in order to use these funds, a budget amendment would be required. And I would preface this with a disclaimer that what I put here are only the wishes of the initiator. This law and the scope of the law does not in itself determine how the funds go. What would have to happen, which is my proposal and what I will be doing, is immediately if I receive the support of Parliament in this law, I will be submitting a budget amendment through the same process, Council of Advice, etc., and then come back hopefully soon to Parliament with a budget amendment to use these funds for the important purposes that discussed. Now, for the minimum price of 20 million guilders, as I said earlier, it has to go towards debts. In discussions with the Minister of Finance and based on his position during the budget debate, I think we come to a consensus that the debt that government has to Telem has to be paid. So what is interesting is we're selling the shares of UTS to actually pay Telem, a debt that is growing, and their cash situation is also dire, so that will help significantly. Also, debts to fund certain school programs, as the minister, I guess, maybe can elaborate further, is also a possibility. But very important and salient, and I think a great victory, is for the justice workers. The fact that one of the things debated heavily is that we had 6.6 million guilders going towards paying the Dutch police officers for their services. As I've mentioned before, I have no issue with the Dutch police officers being paid. What I have an issue with is they being paid ahead of our own police officers that have been waiting 9+ years to get what they deserve. This law would help to cement, basically take away the issue of, well, we want to pay them, but we can't afford it. With the budget amendment that will be proposed after this law, I hope to address that issue and finally give the justice workers what they deserve. So what are the next steps? Well, we're here with the public meeting. This is my presentation, and we would have opportunity to deliberate and then vote. The law has to be publicized, and there are certain other technicalities that have to be done. Then the deal with Liberty has to be sealed. That will now be the job of the ministers. Then, as I mentioned earlier, present an amendment for the budget for these funds to be included and go towards our justice workers. And then go pay. We have the opportunity there to go and pay those debts that are there. So with that, members of Parliament, I hope I was able to give a summary of what we discussed in the Central Committee. I want to also say that It was a very interesting process. The initiative process for my first time was a great learning experience. I look forward to doing it again with other legislation that I'll be presenting. And I look forward to any of your questions, comments, or deliberations today, and I'm happy to be here at your service today. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you, members of Parliament.
We have 11 votes for and 0 against. This draft law has been accepted by Parliament. According to Article 88, subsection 1 of the Constitution of St. Martin, Parliament shall notify the government that Parliament has approved this draft law in its public meeting. The governor will then send this draft to the government for their advice on the ratification of the draft. The government will also look at the financial issues related to this draft, and the draft will then be discussed in the Council of Ministers. If not approved by the minister or ministers, the chairperson of Parliament will be notified. And if approved, then the governor will be notified, and the signing by the government will take place.
Hey ma, how you doing? You busy?
I hear, just paying some bills, taking care of business, you know what it is?
I know, you're doing your online banking.
I don't have to stand in those long lines to pay bills. I can transfer when I want. I can check my account wherever. It's like the bank open 24/7. I even here checking the statement right now as we're talking. How's Miami?
Well, that's why I'm calling. I'm finishing up a few songs now, but I'm afraid that studio time might be more than I thought. And I was wondering if I could get some help with some funds, and I could pay you back as soon as I get back to St. Martin.
Let me check my account. How much you need?
I think 500 should be enough.
I can transfer it to you while online. Direct from me to you. No problem.
Great. Thank you so much, Ma. I'll get online with Bib now.
Alright, darling. You know who you're for?
I need to know who you're for.
Contact WIB today for your complete personal online banking experience. Available for all mobile devices. The Windward Islands Bank, now your online banking partner.
Like to also repeat an issue about the 21 million for UTS. I know that the Minister of Finance barely got away with a motion of non-confidence, but I would like to remind him the 21 million that they allocated, whereby 12 million was going for TELEM and 8 million for the police and 1 million for social assistance. As we said in our past interview, it is ludicrous. It is shameful to see that we put from 21 million, only 1 million available for social assistance. Minister, you can see that if we had to look at the grade, that you barely survive a motion. It tells us that you have a 5.5 on your report card. So you will be bombarded based on age to the next class. We explain that youth, sports and culture is the heartbeat of the society also. And we need to make an investment there. So we are having this windfall of 21 million. Allocate at least 3 to 5 million for the development of our youth. Our sports facilities are in disarray. Our culture also have been neglected. Put at least between 3 and 5 million for sports, youth and culture. We want another 3 to 5 million also be placed into housing, roofing, get people roof done on St. Martin. So at least 150 homes or more people can enter back into their home. And yeah, if there's a private, public partnership also. There's a lot of owners of buildings that cannot have that restored, whatever, but many more apartments can be made available, whereby more affordable, because now we release the pressure for apartment. That means we can also have an impact on the rising price, the cost for apartments on the island, because due to the scarcity, etc. In terms of the police and tell them, that part there we need to see first how the youth and the roof, because we're talking here about eradication of poverty, and if we could take 12 million put into Telem, I believe we're somewhat out of touch with reality. To the good guys in the police force, we said, you know what, the police force is not only the only entity that you have there, that you're going to take 8 million for the police. You have different government departments, different people that also are waiting fairly also for a structured salary or promotion or whatever have you. Be somewhat more fair towards the whole civil servant corps. You understand? But also, the public of St. Martin deserves more. We believe that the youth, sports and culture, that emphasis should be placed on the youth. Get programs, get a sports facility, get the culture going, and get the roofs on the home going. It is ludicrous that they're going to only put 1 million guilders for social assistance. So this may pay for a little understand, maybe, or for someone that need a little help here and there, maybe with some food. It is disgraceful that we only put 1 million. It shows as if that our interest is completely different. I mean, with all due respect, if you're putting 8 million towards the officers who already do have their salary, and I salute the guys them for protecting and keeping us safe. But there are people in this society who have no job, no money, no food, and we only allocating 1 million. It needs to be done with fairness. And Minister, revisit that 21 million there and be fair where the distribution is concerned.